David here with figbootonpens. Today I have for you a pen from TWSBI, and that pen is the TWSBI Vac700. What I'm going to do today is go over some of the parts and the features of the Vac700, talk about what I care for, what I don't care for, show some measurements, some size comparisons, and then provide a writing sample. TWSBI is a Taiwanese company which makes a number of very nice pens in the $30 to $70 range. I mentioned this in an early review of the TWSBI Diamond 580, but the TWSBI name, the TWSBI, stands for the phrase Hall of Three Cultures, or Sangwen Tong in Chinese. The character Wen actually translates to culture and language. And the phrase Sangwen Tong can also represent the Hall of Three Rare Treasures, which is a room in the Forbidden Temple in Beijing, which housed three precious calligraphy masterpieces. The initials of the phrase Sangwen Tong were actually reversed and turned into TWS, and the BI, the BI, was added because that translates to writing instruments. So that's the meaning of the TWSBI name. I actually visited the Forbidden Temple a few years back, but don't really remember being in that specific room. It's open to the public, so I might have been in it. We're actually planning a trip back to China a little over a year from now, so that time when I'm in the Forbidden Temple again, then I will have to be on the lookout for that room and document that trip. The pen arrives in this unique box, which is standard for TWSBI, other than their Eco, which has a kind of a softer, opaque box as opposed to this hard plastic one. The back of the box just has a drawing of the pen as well as some labeling. The top lifts off, and inside the pen is housed in this little kind of stockade-like device. I'll just take the pen out and set it aside for a second. That the top lifts off to reveal a couple of things. First of all, we have some filling instructions, and that also some instructions on how to disassemble the pen. This is one thing that's really nice about TWSBI pens, is that each of them are very easy to disassemble and clean. The nib and feed are just friction fit and pull right off, and it's nice because with each pen they actually provide you with some tools for cleaning and maintenance, and that's what's included down here. That we have some silicone grease. We have two O-rings. Now, I know that there's only one O-ring there. That's because as I was cleaning my pen, I actually needed a new O-ring, and so it was very convenient to have that there. And then we have the TWSBI wrench, which is used to disassemble the vacuum filler mechanism. But it's a very handy tool because you could actually use this on a number of other piston-filled pens as well in order to take off the piston mechanism and clean out the pen. So it's a very useful tool, not only for this pen, but for other pens as well. And here is the Vac700. This is the clear version. When the Vac700 was first released, it was also available in three opaque colors, black, blue, and orange. But those models have been subsequently discontinued, and only the clear model remains. So let's start with the cap. And this is one of my favorite features on this pen, the finial. It's a transparent bulb with the TWSBI logo underneath. The clear plastic gives it a really three-dimensional look that's pretty cool. Then there is a silver band and the clip, which is actually a separate piece. The clip has a decent amount of tension and actually has a matte finish to it, which is different than most other TWSBI clips. And just for fun, here's a look at what the matte finish looks like under a microscope. The cap slopes up to a wide cap band, and on one side of the cap band it actually says TWSBI, and on the other it says Vac700 and Taiwan. And here's one more microscope picture to show off what the laser engraving looks like up close. It's kind of interesting where you can see the lines where the laser made its passes on the metal. The cap actually has diamond-shaped facets, which is in contrast to the barrel, which is round and tapers down to a silver ring. And then we have the knob, which is part of the vacuum filling mechanism. I really like that the knob is faceted as well. It makes it very easy to turn. The cap twists off to reveal this very nice number 6 steel nib. It has the TWSBI logo, which I think looks really sharp. And then it says TWSBI and M for this medium nib. And here's a look at the plastic feed. I'll discuss it more in the writing sample, but this medium nib performs very, very well, and I find it to be very, very smooth. The section begins with a silver metal piece that is slightly flared and transitions into a grip which is virtually straight. It does angle up very slightly, but we're only talking about 0.5 millimeter, so it's basically unnoticeable. Then there's a transition to the cap threads and a rather steep step up to the barrel. The Vac700 is very comfortable in the hand and long enough that I typically do not use it posted. The cap will post, and it does post securely, but I do find that it backweights the pen and throws the balance out of whack. So like I said, I typically use it unposted. Now, the thing that's really special about the Vac700 is the vacuum filling system. You can see in here that there is a long metal rod in the barrel. Now, you might have always heard that you can't convert some pens to eyedroppers because of the metal parts in the pen that could corrode if kept in contact with the ink. But this pen has a big metal rod in it, so how is that not bad? Well, this rod is stainless steel, which is just fine with ink, which is why nibs are also stainless steel or gold or titanium or metals like that, which are all metals that will not react with the ink. So what you need to be careful of is exposed metal like brass, which will have a negative reaction to ink. You untwist the knob, and then you pull this rod back, and you can see here at the beginning of the barrel, the opening is slightly wider. When you pull the rod back to about here, then the rubber at the end of this rod creates a seal. And when you pull the rod all the way back, it creates a low pressure vacuum behind the seal. And now when you push the rod back down, that vacuum will increase in strength until you get back to the point where the barrel expands. At that point, the vacuum is released right there, and that ink is then sucked up through the nib and rushes into the barrel to fill the space where the vacuum was. Then you twist the knob shut. And at this point, the barrel is actually sealed off from the section. You could write a couple of pages like this, but once the ink runs out, then what you'll need to do is just unscrew the cap and pull it back just a little bit, just slightly like that, so that then you can get more ink into the section. Or for writing sessions, you could just pull back the rod just a bit and ink can flow freely for your entire session. You want to be careful though. You don't want to push it too far back or pull it too far back, because then when you do, it'll create a little vacuum, and when you push it, it'll shoot ink out the end. So you just have to be careful not to pull it back too far. It's a fun filling system that other companies use as well. You know, like the Visconti Homo Sapiens, for example, uses something similar. But in the case of the Vac700, it's actually nice to be able to see the inner workings of this pen, and it's always cool to see the ink sloshing around in here, and we'll see that in the writing sample. That I'll actually ink it up during the writing sample and show you how, also a trick to how you can get a really full fill out of this pen. After this pen was first introduced, a number of folks experienced issues with the plastic cracking, mainly around the right above the cap band. And I personally never experienced this issue, but enough users did to warrant a mention. Now, I believe that TWSBI has actually addressed this issue, and I actually hear very little chatter about this still being an issue with the pen, so it's something they addressed. The Vac700 is available in extra fine, fine, medium, broad, and a 1.1 stub. They actually call it, on their TWSBI's website, rather than broad, they actually call it bold. Now, it sells for $65, but if you want the stub, it'll cost you an additional $5. Now, I have one of their stubs on a TWSBI Classic, and it's a fun nib to use. And I feel that this is a fair price point for this pen. The one constant I feel with TWSBI pens is that they provide a good value for the price. All of their pens are either piston or vacuum fillers, and in the hand, they typically feel more expensive than the cost of the pen, which is nice. So there you have the TWSBI Vac700, a pen I feel which is a really good value for the purchase. You get a lot for your money with this pen. If you have a few starter pens and you're looking to take the next step up, I would highly recommend the Vac700. It's one of the better pens that you can buy in the $50 to $100 range. So now it's time for some measurements, some size comparisons, and then a writing sample. here we go with some size comparisons for the TWSBI Vac700. In regard to some other TWSBIs, here it is with the Diamond 580. Then here it is with an Eco. And then finally here it is with a Vac Mini. Then in regard to some larger pens, here it is with a Visconti Homo Sapiens. Here it is with a Sailor King of Pen. And then a Pelican M805. I was going to show you how I ink up this pen, just because I think it's kind of cool. And the ink we're going to use today is Pilot Iroshizuku Yuyaki, which I think is just a really nice orange, and it looks nice sloshing around in this pen. This is what the orange looks like. That it's a decent orange. It's not super bold, so it's a little bit lighter than Noodler's Apache Sunset, and it's along the same lines as the Diamine Blaze Orange, but it's a nice orange. So in order to fill up this pen, what you do, first of all, is, let's take the cap off the ink. What we're going to do is we are going to unscrew the cap. We're going to pull this back, insert it into the ink, and then push down. And when it gets to that point right there, the ink will come shooting up. So let's go ahead and pull it out, and we'll see if we can get, let me see if I can kind of turn this to the side slightly without spilling the ink so you can get a little better view of it. Okay, this is my second attempt at this. So the first time I did it, I didn't quite get a good full at a good angle, and to be honest, I didn't want to then totally disassemble this pen or clean it out to get this clear. So we're just going to show it to you again and just know that I had just filled it up. But what we're going to do here is pull back the rod, and then let's see if I can get this all the way in here and get a good angle as you push this down. And then at that point, you can see the ink pop up. And that's about how much you get in here. And for the most part, just doing it again isn't going to get you that much more. But a little trick in order to fill it up even more is what you can do is turn it upside down. And this is going to be difficult to see at this angle, but if you turn this upside down and then pull back the piston and then push it back up, and you can see the ink rising. Now you want to be very careful in doing so, because if the ink gets all the way up to the top, it's going to start shooting out. But then once it gets to where the air has been pushed out of the nib, then insert it in here again and push it down, and now you can get a bit of a larger fill. And you could do that a couple of times in order to get the rest of the air out of here. Maybe we'll try that one more time. Pull this back and then push it forward to get the air out, but not too far. And then we'll stick this in. And then right there, we pretty much got a completely full fill. And I wasn't paying attention and got some ink on me. So let's actually clean this off and get on with the rest of the writing sample. So here we have the TWSBI, and this is the Vac700, and this is a medium steel nib, and as I mentioned before, the ink is Iroshizuku, and this is Yuyaki. And now for the rest of the writing sample. As I mentioned previously, this is a very smooth nib. It is a steel nib, and so we're not going to get tons of line variation in here. With little or no pressure, with virtually no pressure, it writes by itself. So I'm just letting it sit here, and it's writing just fine. But you're not going to get tons of line variation out of here. And in regard to wetness, I find it to be a fairly wet nib. And in regard to reverse writing, it works just fine. And isn't scratchy at all. And then in regard to some fast writing, the feed works just fine, and there's no issues at all. So there you have the TWSBI Vac700. It is a very unique pen for a very reasonable price. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later.